So we've looked at addition and subtraction. So now let's look at multiplication using our whole numbers. And just like we've seen before, we are going to start with our methods. So how we would first introduce the concept of multiplication to our students. We want them to understand what all the different multiplication symbols mean. So we want them to understand what we want them to do with 3 times 4. So we have different methods that we could do with that. So the first one would be that repeated addition. If I have to add a whole bunch of times, that gets really old. So we have this shortcut, which is multiplication. So think about if you're in a classroom and every person had to turn in 2 worksheets or 2 assignments. I could add 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 for all the students, or I could just multiply 2 times 20 or however many people in the class and get 40 a lot quicker instead of adding 2 20 times. So that's what multiplication is. It is related back to that addition, our very first operation that we learned. So we can think about it being repeated addition. So one way we could think about that is we could have that 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. You also could think about it as 4 plus 4 plus 4. Same thing. And that's because we'll actually write them up on the next page. But we do still have the commutative property that we looked at with addition. We have that commutative property. So 3 times 4 is the same thing as 4 times 3. We could also think about this as 4 groups of 3. Is a kind of another way to have this. So if I was looking at a picture, I would have 4 groups of 3 things. So just kind of a visual to go with that number, which is 12. 4 times 3 is 12, or 3 times 4 is 12. So we can think about it in terms of groups. So we could also have 3 groups of 4. As well. We've got our number line. And I have to go all the way up to 12. Our number line really helps students see that multiplication is the same thing as the skip counting that they started back in kindergarten when you learn to count by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and count by fives, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We also learned to skip count by twos, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Those are your multiples. Those are multiplication. So I could start here, and let's see. Keep our 3 times 4 that we had before. So I'll go to 4, 8, 12 there. So we could see that there are 3 humps. That's where the 3 is. There's 1, 2, 3 humps. And each one of them we're going over 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our 3 times 4. Another visual for that. And kind of, like I said, bring it back around to the skip counting that we would have already learned. Another visual that's used is a rectangular array. And this is actually used in geometry too. When we introduce multiplication, we also can start thinking about the area that something takes up. So 3 times 4 is 2 dimensions. We can think about a length and a width. So I'll do a 3 times a 4. We do want these to be pretty even. We'll come back to this again when we look at fractions, but you don't want one to be smaller than the other. So we can find the area of shapes that are basic shapes, so squares and rectangles. We're not ready for any diagonal lines or triangles or circles or anything like that. And we could count up how many of these units we saw and get an area of 12.